See, I tried to
You
send
do
it
have
to
a
you.
hard stop at 6:30, right?
I got a hard stop at 5:45. I'm supposed to be at the City of Hartford
Well, you
budget
gotta
meeting
put it
right
in.
now.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, you just put it in your computer.
Good to go?
See, I can get it on my
Good evening, everybody. I am not Andy Adel. Commissioner Adel, who's the chair of this committee, may be on the line. I thought he was going to be. He is on the line. He's a little indisposed, so I'm taking the chairmanship tonight. So call the meeting to order. Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments relative to agenda items? Any public comments relative to agenda items? Any public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 3, approval of the minutes of February 21st, 2024. They're included in your package. Everybody had an opportunity to look at them. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was absent at that meeting, and it doesn't show that I was present or absent.
I will fix that.
All right.
Duly noted. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it sounds unanimous. Item number 4 is a report re-lead and copper rule ordinance. Is that for you, Mr. Jellison?
I can
Yeah,
handle
John
it.
can
That's for Mr. Myrtle.
Yes.
This is John Myrtle. At the last Water Bureau meeting, we presented the concept and suggestion that we draft an ordinance based on the US EPA's lead and copper rule regarding the replacement of customers' water service lines that are identified and discovered to have lead or copper. So included with your agenda package is a draft ordinance to that effect that basically gives the district the ability to replace customers' service lines that have lead and copper at the district's cost, no cost to the customer, in accordance with the rule as it changes. And the initial lead and copper rule, I think, came out in '91. Then there's been improvements, modifications. So the ordinance allows for if or when that US EPA rule is updated, that we can make changes to do so. So for Water Bureau tonight, the resolution you passed in February required District Council to report back on the ordinance, so it's presented tonight. There's no action necessary, but if Water Bureau has any suggestions, or if you want to pass a resolution recommending this ordinance to the government committee, the next step would be to go to the government committee, hold a public hearing, and then approve through the government committee and ultimately the district board.
Is this going to be referred to the government committee regardless of anything we do?
Yes, it's
Yes.
not requirement. It's not a requirement for a formal referral from Water Bureau, but because of the content, we wanted to bring it to Water Bureau for your input.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Any comments? Mr. Taylor?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I have a question here about this language shall replace. Does that mean essentially that work is going to be done by the MDC, or is that going to be done by a private contractor?
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Yes, so the private property work, so there's 2 pieces to this. The work that's in the street, as we know that the responsibility of the water main from the main in the street to the property line is the responsibility of the MDC. In these, as we mentioned at the last Water Bureau meeting, we've identified 7 properties. MDC will be doing that work in the short term, and contractors will be doing the private property work. Once we get and finalize our report, October of 2024, we're required to put all this information together and basically put a bid out so that all the properties that we find can be bid, and that bid will receive disadvantaged communities, Hartford and East Hartford, 75% grant, and the other communities are, I think, Dave, 30%. So yes, Commissioner, it will be a private contractor doing the private property work.
But will we be supervising that, just to make sure that it's done in accordance with our rules and specifications and what have you.
Yes, Scott Jelson. So all private property work, whether it's water or sewer, our utility services department, they're the inspection team that does all private property work.
Thank you.
Other comments? Any other? What's the pleasure of the group?
A motion to refer?
Apparently, we don't need a motion to refer. We don't need a motion to approve. We don't need any sentiments whatsoever, but you're welcome to give them.
You have to make a motion to refer to the.
I guess we have to refer this to government, don't we?
I believe that Mr. Myrtle said it's going to government anyway. We don't need to refer. Is that correct?
Correct. Again, if it's based on the content and, you know, if a recommendation for this ordinance from Water Bureau, I think would be helpful, but it's certainly not required.
Okay, do I have a motion then
So moved.
to recommend it favorably to the government committee?
Yes.
So moved, Adel.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to favorably recommend this to the government committee, and it's been duly seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you. Moving on to item number 5, report recreation.
Thank you.
That's you, Mr.
Yes,
Jellison.
sure.
Okay.
Actually, Tom Tyler, Director of Facilities, is going to give our presentation. We're going to talk a little bit about, as unfortunately, our recreational program with lifeguards is challenged, not like, just like the state of Connecticut. So Tom's going to give a presentation on the recreation update.
Good afternoon. Tom Tyler, Director of Facilities. So I'm just going to give you a brief update tonight about our 2024 rec season surrounding Lake McDonough. So I think everyone is familiar, like where Lake McDonough is, located in Bark-Hempstead, New Hartford, 1,600 plus acres of land around the lake, 6 miles of trails. So our primary uses of recreation in that area are boating and fishing. And the fishing is done mainly through deep tournaments. They host them there. And then also District and Deep do fish stocking to promote the fishing. And obviously when people do boating, they're allowed to fish from their boats. There's hiking, there's about 6 miles of trails in that area. There is swimming, but the swimming is done this year, as it was done last year, only at Stancliff Cove, and that is not operated by the district. That is by a separate agreement with the Stancliff Cove Authority, which is a group, 3-member board from New Hartford and Bark-Hempstead that kind of oversee that area that they're allowed, and they have operated that for many, many years. So for 2024, there is no real changes of how we're going to run or how rec is running this year. The operating times, the dates, the fees, and all that, it's on the website. I checked to make sure that everything is there, it's updated, it's correct, and there was no changes to the hours or the fees between 23 and 24. Only private boats. Many years ago, the district had boat rentals, and we found the upkeep of the boats was challenging and the safety concerns, so we no longer have our own boats to rent out, and we haven't done that for several years. And then the fishing tournaments are all run and permitted deep because of the agreement with the lake, the stocking of the fish. So you've heard us talk about this before, that the goal is truly like passive recreation. And so I have an example of what that means, and I'll show you that in a moment. So for us, the passive recreation, access to the hiking trails in and around that area. And so people will access the boats through the card reader system, and there's a group of rangers that are employed there for that seasonal work to do that. The registration is all done online, credit card only. We're not transacting cash or checks because that's fairly problematic for us to keep good control on. So, this year it will be all credit card. Last year We did mainly credit card. There was a couple of people that showed up with checks, and, you know, we took them because we didn't really have a means to say no. But this year, we publicized in advance credit card only transaction. And if something comes up that there's severe weather or something like that, that we're going to close and there won't be boating activity, then, you know, we post that information on the website. We all know there was a lot of rain last summer, so we had a couple days where it wasn't safe for boating, and then we let people know and alert. But we still have someone posted there in case anyone shows up and they try to access with their card that, you know, they can't go in and boat because of safety concerns. So when we talk about passive recreation, this is an example where there was a area, former swimming area, Goose Green, and this dates back now well over a decade. And for, you know, the complications of running it and the staffing it and the lifeguards and the inherent costs and the limited use, and we saw participation in this area go down over time, that the district made the decision that this would become a passive recreation area. So the map on the lower left kind of shows you where it is to the west of where Stancliff Cove and our east and west beaches are. So the pictures in the center of the slide go back to 2012 when it was this was right at the close of the last season, so when it had just been formerly used. We removed the lifeguard stands and, you know, the picnic tables, different area, kind of cleaned it up nice, and now we're allowing it to become more of a natural area, and we think that this fits in, you know, much better with our goals for passive recreation. So I just wanted to give you some pictures. Took a little bit to go back in the archives to find the pictures from 2012 of Goose. Thank you, Scott, for that challenge. I appreciate that. Jim Randazzo really had to scratch his head a little bit, but he was able to find them. So when we talk about passive, this is a really good example of how we've transitioned from an active area into a more passive area.
And before you, if I may, Scott Jellison.
Yes,
The reason why we're showing you this area is this area was turned into a passive recreation area, not because we couldn't find lifeguards. It was because it just wasn't being used the way in which it was a lot of resources and there wasn't any guests. So, but what we'd like to talk about tonight is this is going on. COVID changed everything, and we are struggling to find lifeguards, even by raising the rates, salary or hourly rate for young people. And unlike the state of Connecticut, the state of Connecticut has made decisions and continues to make decisions where they simply swim at your own risk. And we don't believe that that's the right solution for us. Our insurance carrier doesn't believe that's the right solution for us. So Tom's going to continue on this topic, but this is what we'd like to have a long-term discussion about Lake Madonna. And do we turn Lake Madonna into more of a path, no swimming, but recreate, hiking. You still have the fishing and the boating, but also picnicking. And so that's what we'd like to talk about. Introduce it tonight and talk about it over the next few Water Bureau meetings.
Is that back to Tom?
Yes, thank you.
Can we deter people from doing something what is not permitted? So we have to have some type of bans posted everywhere. Don't go in the water, etc. Do we have that?
Yeah, yes, Scott Jellison. Yes, we do. I've said this before in our meetings. Sometimes it's harder. It takes as much energy to keep people out as it is to manage the people that are in. lifeguard side to swim.
My question was, on a trail, etc., if there is an access for anyone to go in the water, are we putting appropriate signs that don't cross the line and don't go into water? Do we have that?
Yes, we do. Every year, Commissioner, we walk this facility with our insurance carrier, and they give us recommendations on signage and all kinds of, we go through a full review with our insurance carrier to make sure that our signage is proper and our safety protocols are proper.
It should be standardized, the same thing over and over. So simply you have a standard map showing where the signs are. Somebody from here can double check it, and then you can take it, your insurer with you.
Yes.
Commissioner DeBelle.
Scott, you say you walk with the insurance company. Does this insurance company sign off that they assume the liability because they've instructed us on what kind of signage to use? Because whether it's passive or not, you've got people on the water having a picnic, and one of the dangers, I would think, is was that a beach before so that you can gradually go out, not like the rest of the reservoir where you have the big drop off?
Yeah, well, so talking about, Lake McDonough, we have buoys that are out in the water, so they're only allowed to go out so far. The challenge that we had in 2008, if you remember, we had a gentleman drowned in 2008. And so during that time frame, we had the boats, and we had a process where, which was going on for 50 years, where people could take a boat, they'd rent it for the day, they'd go off, they'd go outside the perimeter of the swimming area, and they'd go anywhere they wanted. And it was very dangerous for us, liability for us. So we slowly, we put a new buoy system in just for the boats, and we made a bunch of changes with our Chief of Police, Hank Martin, where you were not allowed to rent a boat. You could only rent it for 4 hours. And then we went to 2 hours. And then you have to give your license, and you have to give the names of everyone who's in the boat. And if you come back without the people that you had in the boat, you don't get your license back. So we made a lot of changes, but it was just a huge liability, and our insurance carrier's recommendations, as we take every year, it's important for us to accept their recommendations, and that was one of them. We also, closed the West Beach. That was, again, a recommendation. So every year we do that walkthrough, and they make recommendation to us, and we implement those recommendations.
But it's primarily to protect us.
Absolutely.
It's covered.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you're comfortable that we haven't had any experience after that drowning? I mean,
No, we haven't, and we weren't in that situation. We weren't to blame. I mean, but again, recreation, active recreation creates a huge liability for the MDC, and we do have a patrol boat that but you've got a patrol boat having to search a large lake that. We're providing our own liability by creating this active recreation. So we've shrunken the footprint of our recreation, and now we have this situation where we can't get lifeguards. And so we're not asking for a decision tonight. We're just saying that we're here to talk about the fact we don't have lifeguards again this year, so there will not be swimming. But we'd like to talk through this with Water Bureau about possibly doing something, whatever something is, and whatever that recommendations are, we would again bring our insurance carrier through to talk through that with them as well.
So the request was made to HR, from this board months ago to try and have an increased outreach and a higher level of activity to try and recruit the lifeguards. HR function, Jamie Harlow couldn't be here tonight, so she, gave me some information. about the recruiting efforts they went through. So we posted, like all job openings, MDC website, Career Builder, and they used one of the state career workforce sites, produced 2 applicants. And we needed in the range of a dozen to 15 or more, depending on, people's availability for work. We also did a lot of outreach with social media, Facebook, Twitter, all that did not produce any applicants. And then Jamie and HR did even more outreach that we had not done in years past to schools in the regional area, because we understand it's going to be very difficult to find a youth, who's 50 miles away who wants to drive up to that region every day for work. So they went to Northwestern Regional School. They went to a local swim club and did outreach there as well, trying to attract anyone who was either trained or could be trained, lifeguard certified, because it's a pretty high level of certification. It's not just like, hey, do you want to be a lifeguard? You have to be certified to be a lifeguard. And, that's also a barrier, that there's less people interested in becoming certified. And then they also reached out to Northwestern Community College in Winstead. No interest from all of that outreach. We also increased the wage that we were offering this year to between $20 and $21 an hour, depending on qualifications. And we just simply had no interest in doing that. And I don't foresee that next year we're going to have 75 applicants. I think we've reached the point where year after year we can increase the outreach efforts, and we still do not get enough applicants. And we have to remember, just because you get applicants doesn't mean they're all qualified, and so on. But we just did not have enough pool of applicants to even think about opening swimming this year. So like I mentioned before, the fees are unchanged. There's a day pass, resident and non-resident. There's a list of the towns of what we consider, member towns, resident. Obviously, all of our member towns, and then the other towns that we serve with water, and then the local towns in the watershed. There's a season pass, everything done online, credit, debit only. We did get some feedback last year that someone shows up, 1 car, 2 people, 2 kayaks, and we were charging them for the rate of 2. And so we've modified that. No, if you show up 1 vehicle with 2 kayaks, that will be a single fee. So hopefully we've resolved that issue. So fundamentally, the same thing that we're doing for 24 that we did in 23. The hours have not changed. It's all on the website. I verified that the hours are correctly posted on the website. So there's been no changes in that. And then just to provide you a quick summary of the economics behind this. So in 2023, that top box, we had approximately $16,000 from the boating fees, and you can see the breakdowns of season and day pass and all that. A little bit less than we did the prior year was a little bit over $22,000, so a little bit less money in revenue there last year. The approximate cost for some of the staffing that's there, about $35,000 for our the rangers that are there. And then there's also other costs because MDC staff have to, stop by and pick up the trash and, prepare and do all those different things. This really is not an effort of the water supply staff. It's really patrol and finance, and IT have helped with the credit card part and the managing the funds part. And the water supply staff really just kind of gets everything ready and then does some ongoing maintenance, trash removal, those kind of things during the season. So that's everything that I had to present. If there's any questions.
Thank you. I understand we have Commissioner Salemi with a question.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, through you, this is Commissioner Salemi. Hope you can hear me okay. Can you hear me all right?
Fine.
Okay, thank you. Just a informational thing to ask Tom. Tom, in the areas that have always been considered recreational areas, all Lake McDonough and everything. Does the staff, have any record of, sightings of the wildlife there, particularly like bears? Are the black bears in that area too? Or I assume they're everywhere up there, but
I
is
think,
that,
yeah, right directly around the Lake McDonough swimming area, I have not heard of, moose or bear sightings in that area. There's deer everywhere. But I know that occasionally the water supply staff will see a moose, but that's in the more northern reaches of the watershed
Right.
lands around Bark Hempstead. I don't know about bear. I would assume there's bear in that area. Usually it's when there's a moose, that's a big picture taking event, and we always, we'll see the picture of the moose. But yeah, there's a lot of, in that vast watershed lands that we have to protect our water quality, there's an abundance of wildlife.
I just asked because I understand that the bears are getting pretty friendly out in that area. I mean, they may walk right up to a car or something,
6
if
days
somebody's
out of
parked
the
there.
year.
Just curious.
Out of the week.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Mr. Mandag?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just be very interested to see whether or not we could take these numbers down, or at least guesstimate how many actually live up in the area versus our 8-member towns. It would just be an interesting analysis if we had any way to do that based on zip codes.
I think you probably could, because all the registration is done online and you have to provide, who you are and you're paying for it. So could other people use that? I suppose, but we could do that. We have not to date gone through that dive of the data. So I would say that it probably could be
I
done.
think it would be just very, again, Commissioner Mandyke here, I think it would be very interesting to see if it is a 70-30, a 30-70, how does this kind of fall? Because, who's really benefiting from these areas that we're opening up? And in addition, as far as I am all about passive in these areas, and if municipalities out in the area would like to see more swimming come back, I think we put the onus back on it, depending upon what the split is on this, for them to be one of our partners in trying to assist us in trying to get that staff that we may need out there.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
See,
Mr.
Commissioner, from the information that the season pass resident, non-resident are roughly the same. And the day pass resident, non-resident are, close to each other. So you can see it's fairly even, and the same trends are in 22, that the season pass resident and season pass non-resident are 83.93, pretty close. And the same with the day pass, 108.95. So it's a pretty even split between what we would include in member towns and non-member towns, but I don't have the info to say, of the member towns, how's that breakdown go?
No, but if we could separate, again, Commissioner Mandyke here, if we could separate it out to the 4 towns that are considered resident towns up in the Bark Hempstead area versus the 8-member towns, I'd be interested to see what kind of percentage.
Take a look at it and see if we can do that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, your
Mr.
question, thank you. Your question has already been posed to our watershed towns. Bark Hempstead and New Hartford, our first selectmen, have suggested that, they've been asking for us to open Lake McDonough, and they suggest that they could run the facility for us. And as long as we provided the lifeguards, the police, the trash. So the answer was, well, that's no help to us. So we've already had that conversation. But
And there's your answer.
Any other comment? Commissioner Payne?
Thank you, Commissioner Payne. I just wanted to say that I think it's been a few years, 2 or 3 years, since we've implemented the card access, and I think it's turning out really well, saving us some time. We used to have facility people there manning it, and I think changing over to that is a positive thing. And I agree with the fact that most of these areas should be a passive recreation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other comments? I have a question on you didn't really talk about lifeguards, but I'm not sure where the lifeguards are being utilized. Is the East Beach still open?
Well, it is not, and the reason that we could not open up was we did not have lifeguards to
State parks.
allow for safe swimming. So, no, the beach is closed.
And was that true last year as well?
Sir, the same. we
So
did
when
the
was
same
it
thing.
last opened?
Prior to COVID.
Yeah.
Prior to COVID.
Yeah.
Summer 19?
So it sounds like we would consider opening it if we could find lifeguards, but at present, and there are some commissioners who may not even favor reopening it, but right now the lifeguards is a real problem,
Correct.
correct?
Yes.
I would just throw one suggestion out there for you to think about if you want to think about how to recruit lifeguards. It may be the case that the MDC could sponsor some swim coaches. One of the issues that's occurred in a lot of these public schools, and I'm speaking really for Hartford, I don't know about the member towns, but I know that in Hartford we have a lot of schools with a lot of swimming pools, and we have very few swim teams. And for the most part, that's because the Board of Education is not funding the coaches, which are modest fees. These coaches get $2,000 to $5,000 a year, to coach a team. But I can tell you, I had 4 kids go through the Hartford school system. They all were on swim teams at Hartford Public High School, and they all got certified as lifeguards, and then they all went and worked at various pools. And it's certainly fairly well known that the swim teams can be great feeder systems for lifeguards. So I don't know what's going on in the school districts outside of Hartford, but I know that if the MDC wanted to sponsor 1 or 2 swim coaches at Hartford Public or Weaver, or some of there's other schools that have pools, maybe we could create a feeder system. But I do hear your point that that's a long way for a kid from Hartford to drive to work there. I just throw it out there. Commissioner DeBella, you got a comment?
Same problem DEEP's having. They're having a major problem recruiting for state parks.
Maybe we can get them to fund Hartford Public swim team as well.
But the problem is, I think at $21 or $20, you're gonna have a kid driving every day 30 miles or so.
Yeah.
Up and back. Gasoline's $3, almost $4 a gallon now.
Other comments?
Yes, Commissioner Payne. If I'm not mistaken, don't we donate funds to every recreation in member towns? We give a donation to each recreation and they use it how they feel best suits their needs?
Yes, we do. Scott Chelsea, yes, we donate, I think it's $1,800. I think it's 15,000 divided by 8. I think it's $1,800. And Community Affairs is the committee that chose that 15,000. Community Affairs could be the one to increase that 15,000. It's been stagnant at 15,000 for at least since 2012.
And then
That's something you could consider.
maybe increasing it possibly. And then the only other thing I was going to state was that this is not a new problem. It's been going on since I've been here, the last 7 years or so.
Yeah.
It's been very, very difficult every year. And
I don't think it's a money issue. I think COVID changed the way parents think about kids doing, literally, I mean, I was a state lifeguard in college, so I went through the training and certification, and I'm sure parents are, I don't want you doing mouth-to-mouth with somebody in COVID. How do you do mouth-to-mouth with COVID? So I think it's changed the mindset of parents with their high school kids doing lifeguarding, so.
Other comments? All right, and this is not an action item.
No, but we would like to let you, the point of this is, we're not asking for resolution, but understanding the concern. And we are going to bring to Water Bureau some ideas of what we could do to be a passive recreator and the kinds of things that we'd like to talk about. So those would be for future Water Bureau meetings.
Thank you. Anything else on number 5?
No.
All right, moving on to number 6. And let me just say that with respect to item number 6 on the agenda, At the last meeting, there were two items that were postponed. And those were items, they're in your minutes, they were items 9 and 10 that were different commissioner requests for discussions on, in one case, intrastate connectivity of water systems, and in the other case, establishment of alternative water rates. So those two items are not back on this agenda, but item number 6 is an attempt to deal with those two items. I have reached out to the makers of those, or the requesters of those items, and if they're not satisfied with the presentation tonight, we'll put those items back on the agenda for next time. So having said all of that.
Thank you, and you,
Scott.
yes, thank you, you're absolutely correct. The other requests from other commissioners, we talked with Commissioner Adel and the Chairman Curry. So what we tried to do is consolidate those concerns. Hopefully, we address those issues within this presentation, and if we don't, like you said, we're happy to add additional information. So Dave Banker, who's our Senior Project Manager, Water Guru for the MDC.
That was my line.
He always steals
I know. So thank you, everyone. As Scott touched on, Dave Banker, Senior Project Manager with the engineering group here at the district. And we'll be making an informational presentation on our wholesale water agreements this evening. So first of all, what are you talking about? An interconnection. So an interconnection is where two water utilities basically have a spot where they can transfer water, either one way from, for example, the Metropolitan District or MDC to the town of Portland, or two-way if there's an emergency interconnection. You may have a connection where both you could provide water to utility, and then if they have a big main break on their side, or if the opposite happens, then they can send water to you to supply our customers. So it could be one-way or two-way. These could be used daily. So every day, the town of Portland takes water from the MDC, or they could be used maybe just seasonally or in a drought. There's an interconnection that the district has with Connecticut Water Company up in Windsor on Old County Road that they really only use in general when there's a longer-term drought. We may have a contract or we may not. If there's, for those daily use ones, there's a contract, and then usually those contracts will have a guarantee of a certain quantity of water, which we call a safe yield. So it's a part of our water in the reservoir that we guarantee that company, and they put on the books as one of their water supplies that they can then say that they have available to them. So where's the water transferred? So the map you see on the right side is an example of the district's exclusive service area. So the yellow boundary within the middle there, that's the MDC's service area. What the exclusive service area means is that that's an area where only the district has the right to provide water. So Connecticut Water can't come into MDC's ESA and start extending water mains and supplying our customers. Same thing with any other water utility. Basically, that area is dedicated for the district. These were first established in 1988 through what were called the Water Utility Coordinating Committees, and also through the Department of Public Health. So one of some of the items to note is that within that ESA, then if there's some smaller little kind of community water companies or community water systems, 25, 30 houses that have their own, have a single well. So then one of the responsibilities of an ESA holder is if one of them decides to walk away from their responsibility, say, I'm not going to run a water system anymore, the larger, utility overseeing the area has to take over that. And then this has happened a few times over the course of the district's history. We've gone in to failing, small little water systems, and then we've extended our water mains. This still goes through the petition process and assessment process like normal, and then we provide them with water moving forward. So this whole process also was reaffirmed in 2017. The Department of Public Health reorganized the WUCs, the Water Utility Coordinating Committees, and basically completed a statewide water planning process at that time. And one of the items that we did that was conducted then was that basically each one of the utilities reaffirmed, yes, this is our service area, and if there was any areas that they'd expand to. But basically, we're currently blocked all around by all the other utilities. So if you look at the map again real quick, to the upper left side, you have Simsbury, so that's run by Aquarian. Down below that, that's Avon Water. It used to be Avon Water, now it's owned by Connecticut Water Company. Below that is Farmington, which is also run by the Connecticut Water Company. Below that is Plainville, which used to be Valley Water System, but now it's owned by Aquarian. Next to that in the green is the New Britain Water System. And then below that, in a couple different colors, 3 different colors, is Berlin. They have 3 different water commissions in there. Working way over to the south is Cromwell, which has its own. On the other side of the river is Portland. And then working your way around, there's Manchester, east of East Hartford. And then everything north of that is all Connecticut water. So quick review. So what are the limitations for the district providing water? So for our own water mains extending, it's a 20-mile radius of the state capital. By our charter, we're allowed to serve. But when we're looking to interconnect with other utilities, there's a laundry list I have up on the screen of items for consideration. So one of the first ones is water quality. So is our water similar to their water? So for differences, I'll compare us to New Britain. So New Britain doesn't basically put orthophosphate for corrosion control like we do. Instead, they boost their pH a lot higher. So their pH is around a 10. The water coming out of our plants, 7 or 8. And then we provide orthophosphate. So if you put our water into New Britain's system, it would eat away their little lime scale on the pipes and start corroding their pipes and potentially causing lead and copper issues in their system. So if you don't have similar waters, there's potential to have water quality issues and then have corrosion issues in different water systems. Another one is water pressure. So are the 2 systems at a similar water pressure, or are we trying to send water to Portland, but Portland's water pressure in their system is a lot higher? So then in order to transfer that water, you'd have to build a pump station at the town line and then pump it up in order to get into their system. Along the same, is our pressure a lot higher than the other water system's pressure? If our pressure is higher and theirs is a lot lower, then you also have to have a control with a pressure reducing valve to reduce it, to make sure that the high pressure water doesn't go into their system and then start popping water mains and blowing people's hot water heaters, that type of stuff. The other question is, what's the quantity that they want? So would we have the amount of water available at the spot where they want to connect? So if you have larger mains, yes. If you don't, then you need to make improvements. Use and duration, so how frequently do they want the water? Basically, all the water utilities around us already have their own water supplies established, and they have the water they need. Maybe they need a little more water in the future, but they're not going to want to buy a large sum of water and buy it every day from us when they already have treatment plants and well fields. And then cost. So if the 2 water systems aren't already right next to each other with pipes, a couple hundred feet apart, then it's going to cost a lot of money to extend a water main a long distance. Potentially build a pump station, potentially build, valve vaults and other infrastructure. So those are all items to consider, especially if they don't need the water, if the other utility does not need a large volume of water at this time. If it's for the future, or if it's only for emergencies, do you want to spend a $5 or $10 million investment for, down the road maybe? And then on top of that, there's permitting requirements within the state of Connecticut. So anytime you're transferring water between those exclusive service areas, it's a requirement from DEEP to get a diversion permit. Anytime that you're removing water from the state of Connecticut and then taking it for your system, that's also a requirement to get a diversion permit. And then anytime that there are those formal agreements between 2 water utilities where I say, I'm going to give New Britain 5 million gallons per day of water, you also have to fill out a a sale of excess water permit with the Department of Public Health. And that's so that they can formally recognize that, yes, MDC is providing this water, and basically it's going from MDC's books onto New Britain's books. And then the last item I just want to touch on is public relations. So this is one that came up years ago when the potential of MDC supplying water to Yukon came up. And then anytime you're potentially looking at, all of our water comes from the Farmington River Valley. So then if you're going to transfer Farmington River water to Yukon, that's more of a more controversial. You're taking water from one spot in the state and transferring it miles and miles away. So you have potential opposition from some of the grassroots or different organizations out there. So I mentioned the state regulations. So the DEP is responsible for any transfers of water, either from the wild, taking water from the state of Connecticut as like the MDC does with our reservoirs, or if you're transferring water from two utilities between ESAs. So anytime you're transferring more than 50,000 gallons per day, it now requires a diversion permit. These laws went into effect in like 1986 or so, and then when the laws went into effect, the older spots where you're taking water, you registered with them, those became registered diversions, so they're grandfathered. So we have registered diversions, which are the older spots where we're taking and transferring water, and then we have diversion permits, which is anything that came around 1986 and after. So the diversion permits and registrations all have annual reporting requirements now, where we have to take the amount of water that we're taking daily and transferring, and then we have to report that on an annual basis. How much water did we transfer every day to a town like Portland, and how much water did we take from Barkhamsted and Nepog reservoirs? And then I already touched on, so with the Department of Public Health, there's that sale of excess water permit, where it's a formal recognition with the department of taking water off of our books and providing it to another utility if we have an interconnection. So you may have heard this number before. With our safe yield, 77.1 million gallons per day. So that's the quantity we have on the books. That's what we can we can provide from our reservoirs on the record of drought we had back in the 1960s. So our reservoirs can provide 77.1 million gallons per day every day. Some of the agreements that we have on the books right now, where we've parsed out that water, are listed below there. So New Britain, there's 5 million gallons per day on the books for raw water that they can transfer on a daily basis throughout the year. With Connecticut Water Company in Collinsville, we have a treatment plant there to provide water from an old legacy agreement. So we provide them with 0.65 million gallons per day. Below that is Unionville, so at the intersection of Route 4, the jug handle, you ever drive around there, then there's an interconnection there. There's another one a little further over on Mountain Road. Those two together can provide up to 2.14 million gallons per day. Portland, we can provide up to 1.1 million gallons per day that we guarantee to them from our safe yield. And then Berlin has a 0.5 MGD guarantee at a spot at the south end of the Berlin Turnpike near the town line. So once we subtract those numbers off of our total 77.1, we have 67.71 MGD remaining for all of our customers. So, and then the state has what it calls margin of safety. So they want every water utility to have 15% extra water above their demands, just reserved for the future, demands, growth, that type of stuff. And then, so with our 67.71 MGD of available water, compare that to what we had in 2019. Our demand was 44.58 for our customers. So that was a 52% margin of safety. So we have additional water available. And there's a similar, calculation I won't go into for our max days and max month and peak days. So on the board here, these are all of our interconnections that we have. The top 6 there are the ones where we make guarantees of our water, where we've taken water off of our books and put it onto another water utility's books. And then below that are more of the emergency or occasional use interconnections we have. So I'm going to discuss more those top 6. So these are the contract terms for those top 6 where we're guaranteeing water. The first 2 are ones where we have contracts with expiration dates. So Connecticut Water Company Unionville, that's Farmington. Our contract expires in 2050, and we've guaranteed them 2.14 million gallons per day. As a part of those contract terms, they have to take a requirement of a minimum of 0.775 MGD, or 775,000 gallons per day over the course of the year. So the monetary value with our 2024 rate for that is $1.4 million. And we do also charge them the normal customer service charge and the non-member town charge. So with each of these contracts, it's fun time we had with John Myrtle a couple years back, where we went through just to make sure. We had to review the terms within each contract and see which fees are appropriate to charge them and which fees the contracts do not allow. So with the Unionville contract, we are not allowed to charge them a fire service charge, which we do basically for combination services that feed domestic/fire. And also they don't pay the Farmington non-member town charge, which is the CIP surcharge, the Farmington non-member town CIP surcharge, which has paid for, prior improvements within the town of Farmington. Below that one is Portland. So Portland's contract expires soon, which is one of the reasons why it's, come up in recent conversations. It's going to expire not next year, but in January of 2026. It provides 1.1 million gallons per day safe yield and up to 2 million gallons per day on a max day. Their take or pay is 400,000 gallons per day, which has a monetary value of $742,000 per year. And also they pay the customer service charge and the non-member town charge. We do charge them the fire service charge, but there is no non-member town CIP surcharge applied to their bill. Next one down, Collinsville. So there's no contract expiration for that one. So basically when we built the Nepog Reservoir, we took out a dam that supplied water to Collinsville. So then as part of the agreement there, we supply the town with, or we have an interconnection to supply them with water perpetually. Was it 20 years, 15 years ago, Scott? We modified that agreement.
You're asking me? Yes. Yeah, we modified the agreement, not in dollar amount and not in a water amount, but they get the town of Collinsville gets 400,000 gallons of water for free, period. And then they get to take up to the 650,000 gallons, and they pay for that. And they used to pay for it through this very complicated process of operational expenses, and so we just simplified it. Say you simply pay us for the water, but they don't typically go above this 400,000. And then unfortunately, what happened was Collinsville sold their rights to Connecticut Water, so that's how we got Connecticut Water in the mix.
So since it's that legacy agreement from when the dam was built, then basically there's no customer service charge, no non-member town charge. There aren't any other charges. So it's a very limited agreement there for us to be able to charge them anything. Berlin, once again, there's no expiration to the contract. It's a smaller amount, 500,000 gallons a day. Same thing for the max day. There's no minimum take or pay for that, so they only use the water in emergencies. They recently upgraded a little pump station that they use to take water from there. So if they have a big main break or if they have a fire, then that pump station will turn on, and then they use some of the water from the pump from the interconnection. We charge them the customer service charge, the non-member town charge, the fire service charge, but since they're off of Newington, there's no applicable non-member town CIP surcharge. And for New Britain, they have a pump station basically just down from our Phelps Brook Dam, where they can take up to 5 million gallons per day, 10 million gallons per day on a max day, and there's no minimum amount that they have to take there either. So there's no annual value to that contract, and then also there's no customer service charges or anything applied to it. So some of the additional costs that we see for for these interconnections, biggest one we touched on was the Connecticut Water Company, Collinsville. We were running a treatment plant for them basically for free, giving them 400,000 gallons per day for free, but it's a result of the agreement that's on the books, and I don't think there's been a way for us to resolve that. For Portland and Unionville, we have to conduct an annual flow test. The picture to the right here is an example of that. There's a factory certified test meter. We have to connect downstream of our meter on, and then we have to run it at 3 different flows to ensure that our meter that we're billing them off of and telling the Department of DEP how much water they're taking, that meter is accurate. So there's that annual flow test we have to conduct. There's an annual report that we have to issue for each of the interconnections to the DEP every January. We also just have routine time for troubleshooting and calibrating the meter, the pressure sensors, and the equipment that's out there, estimated 1 day per connection per year. DEEP also charges a fee every year for the diversion permits. I think it's about $1,600 per connection that we have to pay them. And every 25 years also there's the diversion permit renewal. Every 10 years there's a sale of excess water permit renewal that are worked on by internal staff. And also for the diversion permits, they require a large amount of paperwork. So we end up actually utilizing a consultant to assemble all that and then get it into them. And these are just some of the expiration dates for those diversion permits or sale of excess water permits. I won't run through each one, but Portland, we just renewed the diversion permit last year, so now it expires in 2049. Several of the Unionville permits good through 2035. And then the sale of excess water permits with the Department of Public Health, we've filed several. We have three of them on there that we filed back in 2022. It's been with them for almost 2 years, and they still haven't given us new permits. So slow boat.
Working from home.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Adel, you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Through you, the sale of water to, I know, Ski Sundown is not non-treated water. What is the sale we're making to the Collinsvilles, Berlins, et cetera, treated water? And if so, how do we calculate the cost to us?
So let me just run through real quick. Ski Sundown, it's raw water. They haven't used a lot of water. Also, just to touch on for that, they've used it maybe 2 or 3 days per year because it's just when they're making snow in the start of the season. But yes, that's raw water. New Britain, their Phelps Brook connection is raw water, 5 million gallons per day. For the others, they are all treated water. Collinsville, we have the separate treatment plant there that we run. And then Berlin, Portland, and Unionville are all treated water.
Good, Commissioner Adel?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So that was my last slide. So any questions or any discussion?
Good timing. Commissioner DeBello?
Scott?
Yeah.
With the latest PFAS regulations by, I think it was EPA, is there going to be any process of the fact that we don't have PFAS in our water to use that as dilution in the process of meeting the standard that the feds are putting up?
Yeah, so I had sent around an email to all the commissioners, I think it was 2022, when DEEP and EPA announced that they were setting new guidelines for PFAS. They hadn't, as of yet, they hadn't set any regulatory mandates for drinking water, but they were setting guidelines. And what DPH said, and I reiterated this in the email, was that they said, well, one solution is to mix water with something, whatever that is, or drill a new well, or an interconnection. And what my response to DPH was, and I'll use Glastonbury, I'll use East Hampton as an example, is if that's part of the solution, then the state of Connecticut needs to step up and provide funding and grant funding for these types of interconnections. What they said to, as most of you went to the public hearings in Glastonbury, DPH couldn't help Glastonbury. They couldn't fund any grants associated with the uranium in the water. They said the same thing to East Hampton, chromium and metals, heavy metals in the water. And we were proposing in 2016, we were proposing to bring a transmission main from Portland to East Hampton, about a $24 million project, and not for us, but a grant money for East Hampton. Again, the DPH said we can't fund those kinds of projects. So yes, there is a solution. As Dave said, we've talked to all the water utilities recently and last year, And right now, everyone's just like us. Their water consumption is going down, not up. So there's not a big need for additional water. But this PFAS issue, the 4 parts per trillion, is and will create some havoc for some of the water companies. We don't know what that is, but there will be something that happens. And I actually do have a meeting with DPH and the other water utility executives. I think it's next week, to talk about this very topic. If we're going to be, suggesting that these are the options, and I'm going to use Portland as an example, their contract, although the diversion permit was just updated, the contract, as Dave said, ends in January of 26. So we have to negotiate with with Portland about a new contract. And unfortunately, what happened with Portland was DPH, if their goal is to promote regionalism, you'd think they would support the MDC providing more water to Portland instead of them using their well. They have a well that's contaminated with salt because it's within the DPW garage area. They also have PFAS in it. DPH gave them $250,000 for exploratory wells. And my discussion with the first selectman 2-3 weeks ago was, our committee, our chairman, is looking to address this uniform rate issue. Like, why should we sell water to a non-member town, or a wholesale agreement for the same price that we're selling to our member towns? So, and the other issue is the diversion permit. Dave, can you go back to the slide that shows the actual chart with the water consumption on a daily basis, the take or pay, and then the actual agreement? So a lot of these water companies, as Dave mentioned, the state of Connecticut says not only do you have to have enough water to supply your own customers, you also have to have a 15% margin of safety. So what happens if you look at, we'll just pick Portland as an example, they take or pay 400,000 gallons almost to the dime. They might go to 1 million gallons in a hot summer day, but they try to stick to the 400,000. But it goes up to 1.1 million. Well, that delta they use to make their margin of safety. Same thing with Unionville. Unionville, their operators are right there at the gate, literally shutting that valve off to make sure that they're complying with that minimum take or pay of 775,000 gallons a day. But they use the delta for their safe yield. Well, we're providing our safe yield and we're not getting benefit from it. We're not getting paid for it. It comes off of our safe yield, and as what Dave said, we can't sell it to anybody else. It's theirs. So the discussion about how should we frame this new Portland contract moving forward, and be able to frame the other contracts that, unfortunately, Unionville, 2005, the Unionville, we created a new contract with Unionville, and then Unionville sold out to Connecticut Water. So, but that's a 50-year contract. So what do we do? How do we address these issues with the wholesale agreements, especially now that we're moving into this new agreement with Unionville, Portland? So there's one option: you could change the rate, and we have something we got to work with legal on, which is our charter says you have to have uniform rates. Well, you could have uniform rates for member and non-member towns, and you could have a uniform rate for wholesale community. I'll give you an example. At Portland, we only charge them about $2,000 a month, right? A month for the customer service charge for the meter.
Yep.
Versus if there's 1,500 homes there. Now, granted, we don't maintain the property, the infrastructure in their town. We don't flush the hydrants. But if we had 1,500 customers in Portland, it would be $40,000 a month. So is 2,000 too low? Should we consider a different rate structure for wholesale meters that serve large communities? Dave mentioned there's a lot of administrative costs that we don't capture. You know, Dave's time and staff's time in dealing with the administrative part of the diversion permits, we don't get reimbursed for that. So shouldn't we have an administrative charge for these counts? Yes, I think we should. The issue about, I'll use Portland as an example. They're looking at doing a well, and what I suggested to Portland was we're looking at our wholesale rates and looking at rate structures for the wholesale agreements. So if the Portland so chooses to build a new well, right now their existing well has PFAS. Their new well they've tested doesn't have any PFAS, but my suggestion to them was just because it doesn't have PFAS today doesn't mean it won't, that PFAS that's contaminated your existing well might migrate into your new well, and it might take 5-10 years, but you've invested $10 million in a new well, and now it's contaminated with PFAS. And so the point to them is by January of 2026, I'm going to recommend to the board, if they're so choose to not take any more than 400,000, the board has an option to say, okay, well, we're not going to give you 1.1 million. We're going to give you 400,000. So we'll change the agreement to say you're only allowed to take 400,000. And what I said to them was, as you remember, when we were trying to give water to Portland in the late 1990s, Farmington River Watershed Association stepped in and put a protest in against the diversion permit. And what came out of that in our agreement with Farmington River Watershed and the town of Portland is we can't exceed the 1.1 million. If we reduce that through the diversion permit process and the wholesale process, they'll never get it back. The watershed towns will never agree to allow us to go backwards. So there's a lot at stake for Portland in the short term. We're hoping that they can, we would hope that they would just use our water up to the 1.1 million and not drill a new well. So we're working with Portland on that, and we'll keep the board informed. But these are the things that what we can do, and what we need to do is just work with legal to make sure that whatever we do with Portland in this new agreement, hopefully we're looking at things that are uniform and we can apply to the other existing contracts, like the cost of the meter, the administrative cost. We need to dive deeper into the actual unit cost of the water as the uniform discussion, but there's opportunity here, and hopefully in my meeting with DPH Commissioner, if they're serious about supporting communities with PFAS, then they're going to have to be supportive of providing grant funding for those interconnections.
Understood. Comments, anybody? Questions? Again, a non-action item?
And if there's any other concerns that we didn't address, we're happy to just send questions or comments to John Myrtle, and we'll make sure we include those in the next meeting. And this is an ongoing discussion. We're not done. We have to really talk through this about what we're going to do, what the board committee and board so chooses to do with the Portland agreement. So this is just an ongoing discussion.
Ultimately, has to be a referral to the main board.
Correct. Correct.
It sounds like it's an ongoing discussion about more than just Portland.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. Item number 7, moving on then. Report customer water bills.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kelly Shane, Chief Administrative Officer. The good news is I have one slide to show you. This is an update, and I know I can't be the only one interested in the Bruins playoff game that's starting shortly. So I will be as brief or as long as you'd like to discuss this update. But I did come before you in February and share with you some changes to the water bill that we were contemplating and moving forward with, and the goal was for the May billing cycle, which we have met. Are you okay? Yeah, we're making it a little bigger so I can show you some of the changes. And I had shared the changes, and during that discussion, and some of the changes were, I don't know if you've looked, if you all receive a paper bill, or if you go online to our payment portal and you see it presented online. But previously, you would have a black box where the total amount due was with white font. We changed that because that was very difficult to read for some people. So we made that the same white box with the black font. If you could move down, Julie, a little bit. I'm going to talk about the customer information in that red circle in a second. If you could go down a little bit more. See that highlighted text? The main reason for this change in the bill was because we have a new remit address. We have a new remit address for paper billing because we changed banks. We went out for bid. We changed banks as a result of going out to bid. During our selection process, we selected JP Morgan Chase. So over the last year, we've been transitioning all of our accounts from Webster Bank to JP Morgan. This last piece was the big piece, which is all of our customer checks that come into Webster Bank and go through a lockbox process, which is how our checks come in when people submit their paper bills, paper checks and their payment coupons. They go into a lockbox, go to the bank, and they process all our bills, send us a file. We upload that file into SAP, and that money appears in our bank account, and it all reconciles to the proper accounts in SAP and shows the credits. And we also send that another file to our Kubra account. So those that also have online accounts with Kubra, which is our payment portal, it will show the payments in about 24 hours once they've cleared the bank. So it's a very integrated process that we have for taking in those paper checks. So we changed the envelopes. We've changed the paper coupon to show now, instead of the lockbox or the P.O. box being here in Hartford, it's going to Binghamton, New York, because that's the closest lockbox and center that JP Morgan has for processing bill payments. So that was the reason for the change in the bill. So that's why you'll see this change to Binghamton, New York. But also, as a result of these changes that we were making, at the meeting on February 21st, Commissioner Clark, who isn't here tonight, but she made the point, just a billing point, that we have a 25-day payment term. If you'll notice the due date, it's a 25-day payment term, and she asked if there was a reason for that, if the board had approved that, and that it was difficult for some to make payment within 25 days, and was concerned that interest was being charged after 25 days. So I did some research, found that in 2017 we went from quarterly billing to monthly billing. As a result of doing that, and we had a 30-day payment term. As a result of doing that, what our billing folks found was that with the 30-day payment term, what was happening was the checks that we were receiving, and we were receiving a lot more checks from a lot more customers. Many more are paying online now. But at that time, checks were crossing the due date, the 30 days. Their new bill was being issued, and they were being charged interest. What we tried to do here was we went to the board, we had a change to our water ordinance, we asked for a 25-day payment due date. It did not change the fact that interest does not accrue until the new bill is issued, which is 30 days or 31 days whenever we go out and reread the meters. But it gives a 5-day at least grace period for those bills to come in, because when people get a bill due date or a payment due date, they tend to check off on their electronic payment, pay by the due date, or they make a note and send their check in by the due date. That's 5 days for that bill to post through the bank. It works. We stopped having all of those issues, phone calls to customer service. They were enormous when that happened. So even though nobody was being charged interest, it gave, them the opportunity to get that payment in before their new bill cycle, before interest was charged, because once that bill was reissued, any remaining balance on that bill got charged 1% interest. So it works. So by doing that research, I also had my staff, because we were testing this new bill, test to make sure that was the case, because I didn't want to be incorrect. We tested everything, and that is how the system works. So we are definitely on point with that. So we are not charging interest. We truly do have a 30-day turnaround in our bill cycle. We're saying a 25-day pay term so that people can get their payments posted in time. I wanted to make that clear. Scott and I talked about it. We also wanted to clarify that on the bill. Since we hadn't gone fully tested yet, I challenged my staff, and this was a challenge because we were at the end of testing. Julie, if you could bring up that circle there. There is a section on our bill that we, from time to time, when we make changes to the bill, we can add information into the customer information section. So what we were able to do was add a clarification, if you will. Just under the customer information, that first bullet is new, and it's going in this new bill for the May billing cycle. You'll see it in your May bill, stating that the 25-day payment terms, the district allows 5 additional days after the payment due date for customer payments to post to their account before the 1% interest is applied to any remaining unpaid balance. That's just a clarification for our customers to know that they are not charged interest until their new bill, if you will, or they have a 5-day grace period for their payment to post.
And if I may, Kelly.
Sure.
You, Mr. Chair, there is discussions I've had with the chairman. We should, not tonight, but we should talk through at a Water Bureau of whether or not we need to clarify this issue through the water ordinance. So we will bring that back and we can have that debate, and we're happy to do whatever the committee and the full board so chooses. But we definitely wanted to clarify this because of Commissioner Clark's comments, very good comment, that they are not getting charged during those 5 days.
The one other big change to the bill that I do want to show, and Julie, if you can go over to the bottom right, and I did mention this last time, but I just want to point it out because it's very important to Scott as a board member of Operation Fuel. We have added to the paper coupon. So you can do this on the payment portal if you're part of the payment portal and you're paying through Kubra's our payment portal through Kubra, our third-party payer. You can add a donation to Operation Fuel. What we didn't have until this new bill is the ability for our customers to write in a donation of $1 or more on their payment coupon, and the bank will process that and put those funds into our Operation Fuel account at MDC so that we continue to collect from our customers, our generous customers, additional funds that we can then give out in grants through Operation Fuel's program. So we're excited about that. Right now, we receive about $600 extra a month that we put into the account. And we're hoping, because about 33% of our customers, about a third of our customers are still sending in checks, we're hoping that this will increase the donations. And it's not just $1. They can put whatever they want to put in that box, the total amount, and write a check for whatever they choose. What I've been told by my staff is that during the holidays, November, December, we get lots of extra $10, $20, even written on checks to post. So now it gives them the opportunities to see it, fill it in anytime they choose, 12 months of the year.
Can we explain what Operation Fuel is? Someplace in the, we do.
Oh, someplace on the bill?
Bill, yeah. If you're asking someone for Operation Fuel, wouldn't it make sense to give them some?
Yeah. Well, we can look into that, certainly. I mean, a lot of people
More
know.
people probably would contribute if they knew what it specifically was.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just to add to what Kelly said, in part, the reason why we couldn't do this, we've been trying to do this at $1 through Webster Bank for a long time, and they had told us they can't do it. So in part, the reason why we did change banks, in part, was because of we couldn't add this program to our bill. So this was a big success. Kelly's team, and Kelly's done a great job and all the hard work. But we are, that's a good point, Commissioner. We can definitely add some, I know it's on our website.
Yeah, and I think,
Bill inserts.
I
Yeah,
think
the
on our
bill
bill
inserts.
inserts, we have from
Yeah.
time to time put it in there. I think people are used to seeing it on their Eversource bills as
Yeah.
well, because I know it's on
I
there
think
too.
I'm thinking of someone looks at us as Operation Fuel, that we're asking them for money for our fuel or something.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. We can clarify
be a
that.
long
Yeah,
dissertation.
we can clarify that.
Chairman Curry, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a question on the previous agenda item, so I can wait till the end of the meeting.
Oh, my apologies for,
Oh, no problem. I was, my on mute was locked up.
okay. All right, any other comments for Kelly on this item?
Yes, Commissioner Regardo here. Is this
Regardo.
bill going to be a single page? I just paid my bill over the weekend. It's 2 pages. Is it still going to be 2 pages?
It's the same size bill you're gonna see. We only made these changes to the first page and the third page, some cosmetic changes, but what I shared with you is really the changes. It's an update to the bill. It's not like a brand-new bill.
Is there thought of making it a single page?
If we made it a single page, we couldn't possibly have the detail that we have because the third page, but what I can do for you is I can, if you don't want a paper bill, we can turn you into paperless billing and then you can get a PDF.
No,
No, okay. All
Analog, right?
I thought it
Analog.
might be a paper thing for you.
I'd only like one piece of paper because at the end of the year, the
The
envelope
drawer gets big?
gets
Okay.
big, yeah.
I'm sorry. There've been too many requests for too much information on the bill.
Okay.
A follow-up on that, I did see the insert that said, don't use the old envelopes, okay, because it's going to Binghamton now. It's kind of a shame that we're going to a out-of-state, big, giant, corporate, national behemoth bank instead of a local bank. Because they can afford to put little banks out of business, okay, by maybe putting this line in here. Sending it to out of state is, it's like we moved our business out of state. And I find that kind of distasteful. I understand everyone wants to save money and everything else. Right? We used to send our taxes to Hartford. Now it went to, I put those in the mail too. They went to Tennessee or something. But, you know, banking in Connecticut's dead. You know, it's not like it was 30 years ago. And maybe I'm just an old dude saying, I don't want to send it to Binghamton, but that's too bad for Webster. So I'll just leave it at that.
Commissioner, you wait till you see Bob Barron's presentation about the money we're making from J.P. Morgan compared to Webster. You'll be very happy.
Okay. Well, that's because they haven't, well, whatever, I'll thank you.
I mean, I will put in a plug, and I completely understand what you're saying, Commissioner. I will put in a plug for the public procurement process, and we went out to bid, and we had requirements, this being one of them, the donation requirement. And Webster's proposal, Bob was the lead evaluator. Webster's proposal, I mean, I'm not gonna, it just didn't meet the criteria of our requirements. And unfortunately, they missed out because of it. They had their opportunity, is I guess what I would say.
Other commissioners, other comments? Let me just add my voice to Commissioner Gardo and second his fuddy-duddiness. This issue, this exact issue has just come up with the city of Hartford. You mentioned the city of Hartford's tax bills. The city of Hartford did a very similar thing in changing banks, again from Webster Bank, who lost the city of Hartford's business, and they went to Bank of America, but the trade-off was the Bank of America's lockbox, I think, is in Boston, Mass. And I raised the issue with the city because, just as Commissioner Gardo said, it just doesn't feel right. It's a municipality, MDC is a municipality, and here you are sending your bill somewhere out of state. So I would just respectfully suggest that the next time you put out an RFP, that one of the conditions, along with requiring them to have an Operation Fuel checkoff box, is that they have a lockbox that's somewhere within the district's borders. And see who can, see if what is this, JP Morgan Chase, see if they can figure out how to get an actual mailing address and lockbox somewhere in our district. Any other comments? Okay, moving right along.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Kelly.
Next item on the agenda, report, summary of water main breaks.
Dave Banker, Senior Project Manager, back again. So no slides for this one, just a quick update. So breaks this year, 2024, first 3 months, January, February, March. We continue to be below the 5-year average. So for example, February, our 5-year average is 41 breaks. February this year, we had 22. January was a little more comparable to a winter month. We had the average is 46. We had 47. But overall, the last month also, March, our average is 13. We're down to 10. So we've seen a decline in the breaks year over year. Hopefully we continue to see that with more investment in our system moving forward.
Excellent. Questions, comments? Anyone? All right, well, thank you for that report.
Thank you, Dave.
Moving right along then, report, next item number 9 on the agenda, year-to-date water revenue.
Kelly again. Bob is not here, so I just wanted to share that we provided that report. That was the same report we provided last month, and we'll continue to provide that report. And I can answer any questions, or it was a report to be provided, I believe. So I'm not sure if we need to discuss.
All right, well, thank you. That's included in our package.
That was a standing agenda item requested, and so we just figured we'd provide this report. We also provide the budget to actuals report a month in arrears in every CEO report. This is, for this meeting, we provide up to date. I think this one is through March, so you have up to date revenues. Is it through March? Yes, it's through March. And it does a comparison to year over year, March, as well as a comparison to the budget for water revenues.
That's great. If this is going to be provided with every meeting, then maybe we turn the agenda item into commissioners' questions on the revenue report. Sure. Are there commissioners' questions, comments? Anyone? All right, hearing none. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, we're moving on to item number 10, opportunity for general public comments. Is there anybody who would like to make a general public comment? Anybody? A general public comment? Any general public comments? Seeing none? Hearing none? Item number 11, Commissioner's requests for future agenda items. We'll come back to Commissioner Taylor.
Well, I had requested that we discuss the issue of interconnectivity. I was not trying to, what I was trying to get us to consider is to look at the state in its totality. In other words, how can one move water around the state of Connecticut? not just within our franchise area.
So it sounds like that's an issue you'd like included in the next
Yes, and
agenda.
it's not an issue that we can resolve, but I think it's an issue that needs to be discussed on the state level. Given the fact that with climate change and the fact that water sources in Connecticut are tending more and more to either have PFAS or heavy metals, the issue of water in various parts of the state may become a critical one. And the issue basically, if you're going to have water, how do you get it there? You're going to carry it in buckets, or do you move it through a transmission system? And I think somewhere at the state level, if that's what needs to be done, there needs to be a discussion that if you look at the state of Connecticut, how can you move water in the state of Connecticut from point A to point B if there is a problem, and if it is necessary to do that. It's not something that basically falls within the bailiwick of the MDC, but I think as a water company, I think that we ought to be thinking globally and at least have DEP or someone consider that issue or to look at it. They may poo-hoo it and say, okay, fine.
All right, we'll add that to the agenda. Ms. Jellison, you're on.
Yes, I will.
You're on
And
board
I-
with that?
And as I said, I'm meeting with DPH's commissioner and the other water companies. So Commissioner, I will be bringing that up as I suggested. We do need their support. The biggest challenge, the MDC doesn't have a problem with funding, right? We have plenty of resources. It's the small community that needs the water, like East Hampton, like Glastonbury, that doesn't have the funding to initiate those kinds of projects. And that's where DPH or the state of Connecticut has to step up. So we agree with you 100%. We're going to be, well, I'll report back at the next meeting.
We've been through that.
Yeah.
What, 3 years now?
Any other commissioners have any other items they'd like added to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is Commissioner Curry.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to ask the chair to consider keeping number 6 on, maybe retitling it a bit by just labeling it wholesale water sale / rates. But I think we've finally begun to touch on the topic. And Scott, I appreciate you're offering some rational, reasonable, and responsible, at least the beginning of alternatives in how we can increase revenue through the water rates to other towns and other water companies. But I do want to make clear that uniform is a key word. Our charter, and I just want the committee members to understand, our charter is very clear in that it states uniform water rates for member towns. Our charter is also silent as it relates to water rates for other member towns, other towns and water companies. And it's my understanding through previous discussions that there's nothing in any of our rules, regulations, charters, bylaws, policies that would prevent us from setting separate, different water rates in some fashion to other towns and other water companies. But I do agree with Scott that should we move forward with that, they should be uniform. But my understanding would be we could actually have 3 uniform rates: member town rates, non-member town rates, and other water company rates. But I'd like to leave that on the agenda for future discussions, and we can keep moving it forward to reach a point where we can have some serious discussions about how we can create this increase in revenue in a fair and consistent and uniform manner.
Thank you, Chairman Curry, and duly noted. Any other commissioner comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Aye.